Welcome to the Deep Dive. So we've got this fascinating set of sources on Hoi An, Vietnam, and we're aiming to go a bit deeper than just the beautiful pictures.
Right, because everyone knows the images, those gorgeous yellow buildings, the lanterns, cobbled streets.
Exactly. Stunning, no doubt. But if you only see that, you're kind of missing what made Hoi An, well, Hoi An, what drove it for centuries.
And that's our mission today, isn't it? To move past just the look of it. Hoi An's famous for its charm, sure, but its real significance, its UNESCO status, comes from being this incredibly preserved historical hub.
A time capsule.
A literal time capsule of trade, of fusion between cultures. It wasn't just recognized for being old, but for being, perfectly intact as a traditional Asian trading port.
Okay, so we're deep diving into the history, the architecture, and definitely the food. Because the sources suggest Hoi An's essence is something you can almost taste and feel, a connection to its past.
Precisely. It's history made tangible. So to really get it, we need to go back. Think 15th century onwards, up to maybe the 20th. This wasn't just some quiet town, it was a vital center for international trade.
A real melting pot, the sources called it.
Absolutely. For centuries, this was where Europe met Asia. You had Portuguese merchants, other Europeans trading directly with Chinese, Japanese counterparts.
Yeah.
In the 17th, 18th centuries, probably the busiest international port in Southeast Asia.
That's pretty incredible, all focused on the Thu Bon River. It makes the UNESCO designation in 1999 completely understandable. But that preservation, it begs the question, right? If it was so successful, why didn't it just keep growing and modernizing like other ports? Why is it so perfectly frozen?
Yeah, it's kind of the central irony, isn't it? The preservation wasn't initially some grand plan. It happened partly by accident, really. The sources highlight two main things. First, in the 19th century, the port started declining because the river mouth silted up quite badly.
So the river itself changed.
Exactly. Big ships just couldn't get in and out easily anymore. Nature sort of retired the port, like you said.
Okay.
And then, factor two. The French colonial administration started focusing all their development efforts on Da Nang, which had a deep water harbor.
So Hoi An just got left behind, economically speaking.
Pretty much. And because there wasn't that economic drive, it dodged the big, often destructive wave of 20th century urbanization that changed so many other Vietnamese cities. It's pure and oriental medieval style, as one source puts it, just stayed put.
But, just avoiding development doesn't guarantee this level of preservation. It's immaculate. Did the sources mention specific conservation rules later on, things that locked that style in place?
Oh, definitely. That's the crucial second part. The silting gave it breathing room, but the long-term preservation. That came down to really strict building codes and conservation policies put in place over many decades. They clamped down hard on large-scale development in the historic core. It effectively froze that area. So when you walk there, you really are stepping back into, well, maybe not quite the 15th, but certainly the feel of the 18th century.
And you can see the history layered in the buildings. Those foreign fingerprints are everywhere. Let's talk about the early communities. The Japanese were key early on, weren't they?
They were. They established Japanese quarter Nihonmachi around 1617. And they're credited with financing and building the famous Japanese covered bridge, the Chuakao. We'll definitely circle back to that.
Right.
But then, Japan adopted its isolationist policy in the mid-17th century.
It was Sakoku policy, right? Closed doors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the Japanese community here gradually faded. And that's when Chinese merchants really stepped up and dominated the trade.
From different regions.
Yeah, groups from Fujian, Guangdong, Cantonese, Kaozu, Tuichao, and others. They settled, built businesses, and crucially, they constructed those large assembly halls, the Huquan. Those are major landmarks today, showing that shift in influence.
And that whole story, Japanese influence, then Chinese dominance, later some Western touches, it's literally built into the town's fabric. Walking down streets like Tran Phu or Nguyen Tai Hoc, those narrow lanes running parallel to the river, it's like reading a timeline in the architecture.
It really is. That classic checkerboard street layout itself is part of the preservation. And you see this blend with Vietnamese foundations, with Chinese, Japanese, and later French or Western elements layered on top.
Harmonious somehow?
Yes, surprisingly so. We can actually trace 4 distinct architectural periods based on the sources. They show how the town evolved physically. Maybe you could start us off with the earliest one.
Sure. So first up, you have the traditional single-story houses from the 18th century. These are fundamentally Vietnamese in design. Think yin-yang tiled roofs, those curved tiles, wooden frames, often built in a 3-bay, 2-wing layout, very adapted to the local climate. The Duke and Ancient House is a great example.
Classic form. Then, as trade booms, things change. You get the two-story commercial era, maybe around 1850 to 1888. Buildings get taller.
Makes sense. More goods, more people.
Exactly. And the layout reflected that. Ground floor was strictly for business shops, warehouses. The family lived upstairs. They kept some traditional roof styles. But you start seeing things like small balconies, more symmetrical fronts. The first hints of Western style coming in via trade contacts.
And then the Western influence gets, well, more direct with the French presence, right?
Yeah.
The French-inspired architecture period, say 1888 to 1954.
Right. This is where you see load-bearing brick walls becoming more common, not just timber framing. Sloped roofs appear, often with decorative iron railings on balconies. The Sohuan Culture Museum building is mentioned as an example.
Interesting detail, though. The sources say many of these weren't actually built by the French administration itself.
No, often they were commissioned by wealthy Chinese merchants. It was a way to show they were modern, cosmopolitan, part of this global network. Using French styles was a status symbol.
Okay. And the final stage?
The sources call it East-West fusion from the 1930s onwards, really up to today in terms of how things are maintained. Here, the core traditional layout, often that 3-bay structure is kept, but it's updated. They start using newer materials like cement, glass, maybe some steel, alongside the traditional wood. It leads to sort of cleaner, more minimalist lines sometimes. The Deepbong and Hoi An Ancient House is given as an example of this blend.
So you see this evolution in the everyday houses, but then there are the big landmarks where the fusion is really monumental. The Japanese covered bridge has to be top of the list.
Absolutely. Tuakao, built mid-16th century, one source pinpoints 1593, though others say mid-16th generally. It's this incredible structure,
Doingji Hakyu.
meaning house above, bridge below.
Correct. It's got a temple inside it, on the bridge. Architecturally, it's this amazing mix, Japanese structural ideas, Vietnamese decorative elements, maybe some later Chinese touches too. It's unique.
And then the Chinese influence really asserts itself with those huge assembly halls, the Hoi Quan. Oh yeah, like the Fujian Assembly Hall, it's enormous. These weren't just temples, they were community centers, meeting places, places for worshiping deities specific to their home region in China. Grand-scale architecture, loads of intricate decoration, dragons, phoenixes. They really make a statement in the townscape.
Okay, moving from structures to, well, sustenance. Hoi An's didn't just preserve buildings. It seems like it preserved and maybe even perfected its own unique tastes. Lonely Planet called it a global food paradise.
And the World Association of Chefs apparently dubbed it Vietnam's food capital. High praise.
So what makes it so special?
Well, the sources point to extreme localization. You literally can't make some of Hoi An's signature dishes properly anywhere else. It comes down to specific local ingredients.
Like what?
Like the incredibly fresh herbs and vegetables from the nearby Track K vegetable village. They're famous for their organic methods. And then there's the almost mythical water from the Bala Well.
Ah, yes, the well water. It kept coming up. Dates back to the 10th century.
Apparently so. It's said to be rich in calcium and minerals. And this water is the non-negotiable ingredient in a couple of key dishes.
Okay, let's get into the specifics. Dish number 1 has to be kalu, pork rice noodles. The sources basically say this is Hoi An in a bowl.
It really is. And the noodles are the star. They must be made using that Bala Well water. But that's not all. The water is fixed with wood ash.
Wood ash.
Yeah, specifically from melaleuca trees that grow on the nearby Cham Islands. This whole process, that unique water, the ash treatment, gives the noodles this distinctive texture. They're thick, kind of chewy, firm, surprisingly similar to Japanese udon noodles, actually.
Which makes sense, given the history.
Exactly. Then they top it with slices of savory pork, often cooked in a style similar to Chinese char siu, fresh local herbs, maybe some crispy bits, and just a little bit of rich broth at the bottom. It's the town's history, right there on a plate.
Wow. And the secrecy around some recipes is wild, like the bon bo bon vok, the white rose dumplings.
Oh, those are beautiful. Named because they look like little white roses when plated. They're delicate steamed dumplings made from rice flour.
And the ballet well water again.
And the Bole well water, yes. And the sources claim the recipe is a closely guarded secret, held by just one family now in its 3rd generation, that supplies pretty much the entire town.
One family. Seriously, how do they manage that?
It seems to be this incredible legacy of maintaining tradition. They clearly understand the value of that specific method, the specific water. It's kind of amazing in today's world, isn't it? a family monopoly based on a 1,000-year-old well. It shows just how deeply rooted and localized this food culture is.
Incredible. Okay, so beyond those two hyper-local specialties, Hoi obviously does other Vietnamese classics really well too. The banh mi gets a mention.
It does. Anthony Bourdain famously raved about the banh mi from a place called Banh Mi Phuong, calling it the best. Well, he might have said in the world, but certainly a standout.
High praise indeed. And chicken rice. Cam ga.
Right, cam ga. Believed to have Hainanese origins, likely brought over by Chinese immigrants. But the Hoi An version is distinct. The rice itself is key. It's cooked in chicken broth with turmeric, giving it that yellow color and fragrance. Served with shredded chicken, maybe some herbs, and often a little salad of shredded green papaya on the side.
Sounds delicious. What else? Mi quen?
Mi quen, yeah. That's more of a regional dish from Quang Nam province, where Hoi An is. Flat, wide rice noodles, also often yellow from turmeric or gardenia seeds. They're usually served with a mix of proteins, shrimp, pork, maybe quail eggs, lots of fresh herbs and greens, and just a small amount of intensely flavored broth at the bottom. It's more of a noodle salad than a soup.
Right, not swimming in broth. And bánh xèo, the savory pancakes.
Bánh xèo, always fun. Those crispy, savory crepes, usually filled with pork, shrinks, and bean sprouts. The best part is often assembling it yourself at the table. You take a piece of the pancake, wrap it in rice paper with lettuce and herbs, and then dip it in that special fish sauce-based dipping sauce. That mix of hot, crispy crepe with cool, fresh greens, it's fantastic. And this focus on tradition, on specific local elements, it extends beyond food. The culture itself feels preserved, but also alive. You see it, especially along the Hoi River, which is a branch of the Thu Bon.
Yeah, the sources get quite evocative about the river, particularly at night. The lanterns.
The lanterns are iconic, aren't they? That whole atmosphere, especially during the full moon, it becomes magical.
They actually turn off the electric lights.
They do. On the 1st and 15th days of the lunar month, the old town officially swaps electric lights for traditional silk lanterns. They've been doing this systematically since 1998, calling it the Lu Hoi Dim Rem Pho Khoi, the full moon festival in the ancient town.
Must be incredibly atmospheric.
Oh, absolutely. Very calm, very serene, quite romantic. And people release paper lanterns with candles onto the river. It's partly a tourist thing now, of course, but it has roots in rituals thanking ancestors, wishing for good fortune. It connects the present back to these older traditions.
And it's not just visual atmosphere. There are actual folk arts still practiced. The sources mention Bai Cho. What exactly is that?
Bai Choi is fascinating. It's unique to central Vietnam. It's kind of a game, kind of a performance art. It happens often on the 14th night of the lunar month, coinciding with the Lantern Festival.
A game and performance, how does that work?
Well, it involves bamboo huts, cards with specific names, drums, and singing. There's a central figure, the An Hyu, or Che Hyu, who draws a card and then has to sing or chant verses called Ho that cleverly relate to the name on the card. People sitting in the huts who has that card win that round. It requires real wit and improvisations, like folk music meets bingo meets poetry slam.
Wow, it sounds complex. And deeply local.
Very. And then there's another art form mentioned, Hapatao, which connects directly to Hoi An's maritime soul.
The sea connection. Makes sense for a former port town.
Exactly. Hapatao translates roughly to Song of Rowing the Boat. It's a performance art that depicts the life and work of fishermen. It's often performed during festivals celebrating the sea god, or fishing festivals come in, even sometimes at fishermen's funerals. A key part is expressing gratitude to calling the whale god.
The whale god.
Yes. There's a strong local belief that whales are sacred protectors who rescue fishermen caught in storms. So this performance art honors that belief and the community's dependence on and respect for the sea. It keeps that historical connection alive through performance.
So you have the tangible history in the buildings and food, and the intangible in these rituals and performances. What about things visitors can actually take away, souvenirs that reflect this culture?
Well, the most obvious has to be the silk lanterns. They're everywhere, and they are the symbol of Hoi An. Beautiful craftsmanship.
And clothing. Tailoring is big there, isn't it?
Very big. Getting an awade, the traditional Vietnamese dress tailor-made, is incredibly popular.
Yeah.
You can get traditional styles or more modern interpretations. It represents that blend of old and new beautifully. And finally, calligraphy is mentioned. Getting a scroll with meaningful characters written is quite common, seen as bringing good luck or wisdom. #, outro.
So putting it all together, Hoi An really does emerge as this miraculous time capsule. You have the history of it being this major international trading hub where Japanese, Chinese, European influences all converged.
Right, and that history is literally etched into the architecture, this fusion you can still see and walk through today.
And then there's the food, which isn't just generally Vietnamese, but hyper-local, tied to specific ingredients, specific histories, specific families even. It's not a museum piece. It feels like a genuinely living, breathing cultural center.
And I think that's the crucial point. The reason you can still experience this past so directly, whether it's tasting cow loose made with that specific well water or seeing the town lit only by lanterns, is because it's a conscious, ongoing effort.
It didn't just happen by accident, not entirely.
No, that painstaking commitment to tradition, to maintaining the old houses, to preserving the recipes, to keeping the rituals alive, that collective effort is what allows Hoi An to offer this incredibly rare window into a bygone era. It's preserved because people keep preserving it.
A legacy of deliberate conservation, then. It really makes you think. So, for you listening, what piece of this heritage, maybe a specific dish like the white rose dumplings, or a building like the Japanese bridge, or even a ritual like the lantern release, what part of Hoi An's unique story are you most curious to explore first, now that you know a bit more about its layers?
Maybe trying to track down that balo well itself, seeing the actual source of so much unique flavor. That could be quite the starting point.